Committee on January 17th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And sorry, my agenda got buried. On the agenda, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. So you guys can stand and mute, and I will recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll head over to citizens' comments. And Alita, I had no notice of anyone, and I'm assuming nobody else is banging down our door. Okay. So without any citizens' comments, we are actually going to bring the meeting into executive session, and I'll turn to Amy Cohen for a motion.
Sure. I move to enter into executive session at 6:01 p.m. pursuant to M.G.L. Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Superintendent of Schools. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, executive session to include the school committee and Superintendent Downing committee will return to open session at the conclusion of the executive session.
I'll second that, and I do declare such. Do I have any discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. So Amy Cohen.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Shondor.
Yes.
Amy Vessels.
Yes.
Scott. And Dana.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
And Karen.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. The executive session we were just in was to discuss our negotiation with non-union personnel and conduct negotiations regarding non-union personnel, who is the superintendent of schools. That discussion has come to a close, and we would like to now replicate in public session the finalization of the superintendent's next contract. So Amy Cohen, could you create a motion for us?
Sure. I move to approve a 3-year contract with Superintendent Downing as presented during executive session.
I will second that. Any further discussion? Yeah, Scott.
Just a procedural question.
Yeah.
I don't see this vote on the agenda. Can we do this?
Yeah, we asked that question. Joe, it was a firm yes to replicate what happens in executive session in the public session.
Okay.
Yeah. Any further discussion? All right. So, sorry guys, I'm just moving all my windows around. Let's go and take our formal vote here. Amy Cohen.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Shondor.
Yes.
Amy Vessels.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Jackie. I think that was a yes, Jackie. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
And Dana.
Yes.
Hope I got everybody. All right, everybody. So the Nashoba Regional School Committee is thrilled to announce that we've reached another 3-year agreement with Superintendent Kirk Downing. And the base salary for that new contract is $225,000. And the contract will be made available in the meeting materials of this meeting. And I'd just like to share a couple pieces of information that were for the consideration of the committee and reasons for this agreement to come through the way that it did. The superintendent has, over the last 3 years, provided the Nashoba Regional School District with a comprehensive vision through our strategic plan that continues on in his work and in the work of the district, and that is much appreciated. That has led to a good deal of stability for the Nashoba Public Schools, for all of our staff members and for our families, and that stability is, in my opinion, priceless. We also have several fiscal considerations that we took into account. The first and foremost is the significant reduction of legal costs that have occurred under Superintendent Downing's leadership, and also the nature of our E&D account and the health that he has brought to that. That E&D account, of course, contributes to our bond rating, which is important at this time for the Nashoba Public Schools. In addition, Superintendent Downing, unlike many other superintendents, is responsible for bringing through to fruition the new Nashoba Regional High School, which is no small undertaking and really a job in and of itself, which we completely appreciate. So the document will become a matter of public record, and if any constituent has any questions for us, please feel free to email us. But at this time, I'd just like to ask Superintendent Downing if he would like to say any words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I couldn't be happier to renew this agreement with Nashoba. I've come to fall in love with the Nashoba Regional School District, and I think we're doing some fantastic things. And any success we've experienced has been the success of a team of people, not just the superintendent. So we look forward to all the great work to come, and you'll learn more about that tonight during the budget workshop.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kirk. All right, everybody. So we are going to keep going with our agenda here. The next item for our consideration is the consent agenda, and I'll turn to Amy for a motion.
Sorry, guys. I move to approve the consent agenda of January 17th, 2024, containing draft meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2024, and the warrant of January 19th, 2024.
And I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the roll. Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Shandor?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Jackie? Mike?
Yes.
I heard you, Jackie. Thanks. Joe?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And Dana?
Yes.
Very good. So now we are going to move on to the main event, that is new business, and we have the FY25 budget workshop, which is an annual event for us. And just for anybody watching at home, please know that the budget workshop is really the first step in this public process. Much has been underway behind the scenes, but this is the first presentation of the budget, which means that it is rather preliminary and without much understanding of the revenue side of things. But it is an important first step, and we're looking forward to this presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Downing, let him drive the bus, and we will certainly be allowed to ask questions as we go.
Madam Chair, thank you for your recognition. We're very pleased our team is here tonight to present the first draft of the proposed budget for the fiscal 25 school year. At this point in time, I'm going to ask Mr. Mulcairn to pull up the slide deck. And Mr. Mulcairn, if you don't mind driving for us this evening. Wonderful, thank you. So I'd like to begin to talk to you a little bit about the presentation overview. After introductions, Ms. Friend is going to go through the work of our strategic plan and what the focus of our school budget should be. We're then going to move through the departments where members of our team will be presenting their elements of the budgets. When we come to the school-based budgets, I'll be reviewing with the committee what's been happening in our schools. Mr. Mulcairn will take us through the revenue, through all the cost tables in each of these departments. And then we'll be wrapping up the presentation with some very basic revenue projections, knowing that we don't have definition around all of our potential revenue streams to date. This is standard. We've experienced this every year in the crafting of our budget. But let's go on to meet the team. As your superintendent, I have a cabinet team that is made up of Laura Friend, our assistant superintendent, Ross Mulcairn, the director of finance and operations, Rob Frieswick is our director of facilities, Yumei Yao, interim director of pupil personnel services, Sue Chi, our technology manager, Miss Mariah Zwicker, our nurse leader, and Anne-Marie Stoika, our director of human resources. This budget also is crafted through the participation of our principals. Next slide, please. Pardon me, Madam Chair, I have a bit of a cold. Our principals are Joel Bates of Florence Sawyer School in Bolton, Scott Blanchard, Mary Rollinson Elementary, Dr. Kathleen Boynton at Nashoba Regional High School, Kyle Grady at Hale Middle School, Sean O'Shea, Luther Burbank Middle School, and Lenore Zevlik, principal of Center Elementary School. And also our athletic director, Tanya Rich, will be commenting on the crafting of the athletic budget, as it's a significant budget in our school system. Next. I want to thank Bridget, excuse me, I want to thank Bridget Hannigan. She's done a nice job of taking what were rudimentary flow charts that I had crafted last year and made them much more professional. So as you see these, this is the work of our communications specialist, Bridget Hannigan, to give you a sense of how the leadership team is broken out. And it's at this point that I would like to turn it over to our assistant superintendent, Ms. Laura Friend, to talk to you a little bit about what a school budget purchase, what our three towns are purchasing in the Nashoba Regional School District budget. Ms. Friend.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. It's nice to see the faces of our students here as a reminder of our work. It's an honor to help support our presentation efforts with our FY25 budget requests. 2 years ago, our NRSD mission was developed with the work of our Strategic Planning Committee. Our mission statement was developed word by word, phrase by phrase, in an effort to serve really as the cornerstone of our work, informing not only our current practices, but also serving as a roadmap for our future plans and programming on behalf of our students. As you will see this evening, our budgetary requests are shaped by our efforts to actualize this mission, our purpose, through the implementation of our strategic plan. Next year, we will enter into the third year of our 2022-2027 strategic plan. It's hard to believe. The vision here for you is one that's aspirational. It is what we hope for, and we hope for our students. Our goal at Nashoba with our vision statement here is to create learning experiences for our students, pre-K to 12, where they can become independent, confident, self-directed learners with the goal of eventually preparing them to make meaningful contributions to society to impact the world. Next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. Our values are intricately connected to our mission and our vision, serving as the fundamental principles that guide every action and decision. At Nashoba, we value academic achievement and growth in a collaborative and safe environment where each and every member of our community, students, faculty, staff, and families, see themselves and believe that they belong. Next slide. Our theory of action operationalizes our school district's mission and vision. It serves as the bridge between the concepts of our mission, vision, and values and the roadmap of our strategic plan. It really is the how-to, if you will. The budget presented before you this evening reflects our mission, vision, values, and this theory of action. The requests reflect in large part specific objectives and initiatives from within and beyond the classroom across grade levels and content areas, with a goal of helping to implement our strategic plan on behalf of our students. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Downing.
Thank you, Ms. Friend. We introduced to the committee this notion last year of when building a budget, we look at equality and we also look at equity. when we look at equality, we're looking at those ratios of how we staff our buildings with administration, guidance counselors, deans, teachers in general classrooms. And then according to our class size standards of no more than 22 students in grades K through 2, no more than 24 in grades 3 through 12, with the exception of large classes like bands and gyms that we experience in our high school. Equity is a little bit different in that this is targeted specialized programming for students. With IEPs and 504s, we have designated curriculum programs for our English learners. We also have programs for Title I students. And then we are building our multi-tiered systems of support model that you're very familiar with throughout the years through multiple presentations of Assistant Superintendent Friend and her team to show that there are moments where we have to use equity to maybe put more resources towards one direction than another direction in order to hit some of our targeted goals. But these are the principles of which we go about building our budget. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some personnel changes that have happened this year based on the voted budget. Every year, there's always some sort of adjustment because dynamics change from the moment that you vote a budget in March to when you open school the next September. At Mary Rowlandson Elementary, we had some enrollment increases at kindergarten, which required us to add a kindergarten teacher. We were originally scheduled for 3 at Mary Rowlandson in last year's budget, but we had to add a kindergarten and an instructional assistant there, which also precipitated us increasing PE and art by 0.2 in order to make the instructional model work. It just so happens that we had under enrollment at Florence Sawyer School. So Florence Sawyer had decreased in that area. So we were able to shift that teacher from Florence Sawyer School to Mary Rowlandson. So when you see increases and decreases year over year, it's not based on the actual people in the building today. It's based upon what the voted budget last March was to the proposed budget we're presenting you today. At Nashoba Regional High School, we had a reduction that was based on various departments, FTEs, due to course enrollments and shifting of programming. And then in the school district, we had a reorganization of our special education leadership model, and that we previously had 7 employees that functioned as evaluation team chairs and school psychologists. And we decided to decouple those job responsibilities and have team chairs be dedicated team chairs and school psychologists be dedicated school psychologists. In order for that model to work, we needed to add a school psychologist. We needed to increase, excuse me, before I go to that part, we needed to add a school psychologist. In addition, we needed to increase the Florence Sawyer BCBA by 0.2 of an FTE. That was a 4-day-a-week employee and now is a full-time 5-day-a-week for needs that were there in that program focused at Florence Sawyer School. And then we have an increase in 0.5 special educator with the January 2nd start. So budgetarily, that actually is level, because as we reported to the committee, we had a difficult time filling the 0.5 position at Luther Burbank Middle School. At the mid-year point, we increased it to 1.0. That brought some attractive candidates to attention, and we have hired that position. So fiscally, it is level for the year. So when we look at the increase of the 1.0 school psychologist and the 0.2 BCBA as a 1.2 increase, and we look at the 0.2 PE and 0.2 R at Mary Rowlandson, that is balanced out by the fact that we did not also fill 2 instructional assistant positions in the district this year. That was sort of the trade that we made to pull off this model, and we think those were some effective decisions. So these are the shifts that were made that are all budget neutral for this year. But when you see these elements expressed in later sections of the budget, we're expressing them as new because, again, it's a voted budget to voted budget comparison. So before we move on to the proposed budgets, I want to pause there for a moment for clarity and solicit any questions from the committee if you have them.
Just raise your golden hand if you have any questions at this point. I will say that was a very useful slide, Kirk, because that would create questions later on for us.
Yeah.
So that there is this increased staffing, but there's probably not going to be a fiscal difference, right?
Yes, there's no fiscal impact in terms of we did not add any additional costs to this year's budget to meet those needs. They were shifts, essentially.
Right.
The one place where we did an exchange is with the 2 instructional assistants to pull off the model to bring in the school psychologist to support the model of decoupling the team chair psychologist would.
I see. Okay, Amy.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the high school decrease FTEs.
I think when we get to the high school slide, we'll be able to provide that to you in a little more detail, Ms. Cohen.
Great.
That might be a better place to do it if you don't mind.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any more golden hands. And so I think we can continue on.
Right. All right, we're going to go ahead and look at our department budgets. And so at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to our Finance and Operations Director, Mr. Ross Mulcairn.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present our FY25 proposed budget this evening. I'd like to thank Superintendent Downing, Assistant Superintendent Friend, and the entire leadership team for the Nashoba Regional School District for their partnership in the FY25 budget building process that began early this fall. We continue to want to recognize and thank some people behind the scenes, our Assistant Director of Finance and Operations, Renan Ansusau, and the Human Resources Department staff, Anne-Marie Stoika, Darcy Wardwell, and Christina Hayden, as well as our District Treasurer, Vicki Charter, and their help in building the budget for this evening. I'm going to do my best as I manage multiple screens and have my budget out so I can answer questions as we go. But if you see me pause, it's just so that I can pull up the right information as things may be asked. So I'm going to begin my portion of the presentation this evening with a reminder of the work that's been done to date with the budget. This isn't the complete timeline, but it certainly shows what's been done and what brings us to our date of January 17th this evening. We've hit all of our major benchmarks, including some of the discussion that's happened at E&D, the great work that was done through OMAC for the OPEB Management Advisory that was led by Representative Scott Powell, as well as all of our internal meetings and things of that nature. So our FY25 proposed budget as of this evening stands at $71,433,566. We're aware that there's been a significant increase in our debt service due to the new high school project with the sale of the first bond. We'll be spending the majority of our evening focusing on the operating budget, highlighted in yellow, which drives the educational plan that we seek to deliver in our district in fulfilling our mission for each and every student that we have the honor to educate. As we work through the presentation this evening, we'll be stepping through each section as organized within the executive summary that you've been provided at the front of your budget document, beginning with the departments and finishing with our excellent schools. So our first look is within the insurance and benefits budget. We used our current insurance enrollment and approximately a 5% increase in building our estimates. In FY24 at this time, for our budget workshop, we were much more conservative and used a higher increase in predicting and estimating our insurance costs, but we saw the decrease realizing that when we finally get our rates in the middle of February, end of February. We will continue to work with the Insurance Advisory Committee, which is currently reviewing health insurance plans that may also impact rate changes. Those rate changes will be first notified through a range that's provided to the entire Massachusetts interlocal insurance trust that we'll get near the end of this month. So they'll tell us within the trust, the ranges of increases will be X to Y, but our actual increases for Nashoba for FY25 will not be provided until the middle of next month. And at that point, we'll provide propose provide an update to the proposed budget for insurance for health and dental for both active and retirees. With regards to our operational insurance and benefits, we've used an approximately 10% increase on rates. We will not get those rates until later this budget season. I had a conversation with our representative through Cabot and got the okay to use a 10%. That's probably conservative, but we don't want to put a number out that we're going to have to back out later. And then obviously our Worcester County retirement assessment won't be known until the end of this month and beginning of next. Again, all these updates to the insurance costs and increases will be updated to school committee as we receive them, and we'll certainly update the budget and let you know the changes there with them. But as I will with every section, I'm going to present essentially the executive summary for each section of the budget. As you can see, the increases that have been applied here, most notably, we're still waiting on our big ones as far as our health insurance and our Worcester County retirement assessment. If there's any questions regards to insurance and benefits, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Not seeing any.
Okay. So system-wide. Our system-wide budget encompasses most of the work that's done out of the superintendent's office, the business office, and the human resources office. We've done some things within our other administrative and clerical support salary line that now includes the treasurer. We spoke to you earlier this year as Vicki Chartier went on to a different position outside of our district. She's remaining as our part-time treasurer, and her salary and future treasurer salaries would be incorporated there, as well as a stipend for the communications coordinator that we have working, and Superintendent Downing already gave a nod to Bridget Hannigan for her work. Our OPEB trust contribution reflects the work that was done by the OPEB Management Advisory Committee that was established by this school committee last spring and began their work over the summer. I've linked for the public's education, I've linked the presentations done by Mr. Powell and the group within this slide, along with their recommendation, and the OPEB trust contribution for FY25 includes that recommendation. You'll also see that our transportation costs are going up. Those are contractual and based on the rates that were set as we began that contract with D-Bus. The school choice assessment is decreased, and that's due to the increase in school choice in the district. So what the state does is the state will work with what essentially your assessment is for school choice. We'll bring that assessment down based on the number of students that you have coming in. So the net assessment reflects those changes and the estimates. And again, as we receive any more information with regards to whether it's school choice or anything else, we'll provide updates to the school committee at that point. I do want to pay a quick special attention. This is essentially a slide from the December 14th school committee presentation where we broke out the debt that will be assessed in FY25 and certainly shows the previous high school renovation, which will be in its final payment in FY25, the track and field, the leach field and fuel storage projects, and then most notably our first bond comes on the books in FY25. And you can see the capital debt subtotal and total here after the athletic offset is applied. So within the FY25
Ross,
budget.
do you mind? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind going back one more slide?
To here or one more?
One more.
Certainly.
And I feel like Mike might have a question on that. Mike? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I am muted. So on that slide, the third bullet down says that the OPEB trust contribution was $50,000, which represents the recommendation. And my understanding was that we would be increasing by $25,000 each year. And if you go to 2 pages after this, I think page 20, it reads that the contribution is $75,000, which was in line with what I was expecting. I just want to know if that was a misunderstanding the language or if that was just an oversight, just a small oversight.
No, that's a small oversight on my part. The increase was $25,000, Mr. Hess, you're absolutely right. And the figure that's shown in the FY25 proposed of $75,000 is absolutely correct.
And if it's okay, I'd like to ask another question.
Please.
I'm sorry, my screen was off and I had my hand up and then we moved on. But with regards to the previous section, there is the Insurance Advisory Committee is, I think the slide says that it's looking at alternative plans. Would that only come into effect during a contract year, if any changes to plans were made?
No, so per the collective bargaining agreement, the Insurance Advisory Committee can be formed to review plans. Any changes thereof would need to be ratified by the Unit A and the Unit C, as well as the school committee.
So
and I believe that Anne-Marie Stoik is here, and I don't know if she wants to further add into that, because this is my first time through the Insurance Advisory Committee process, and she might have another couple of points to make.
That's correct, Ross. The recommendation of the Insurance Advisory Committee, if ratified both by the school committee and by the NREA, would be in effect for next year.
All right, so I'm happy to stop and take questions, but at this point, let's try to cruise through this, and we'll, if you want, make a note of all your questions and we'll ask them at the end.
Madam Chair, the way we have rehearsed our presentation this evening is that after Mr. Mulcairn goes over the tables in each section, we're going to pause to examine any questions in that section.
Very good. That's great. Thanks, Kirk. Okay, Ross, go for it.
And I'll also point out that we're taking notes, and our Assistant Director of Finance and Operations, Renan Antusau's, on YouTube taking notes as well. So when we regroup tomorrow in the next couple of days, we'll be putting our notes together to update anything. So thank you. So I'd like to introduce Mariah Zwicker, who is our new Health, Wellness, and Safety Director. She's here with us this evening, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Ross. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mariah Zwicker, and I'm the new district nurse leader for Nashoba Regional. I'm really happy to be here. I started towards the end of right after Thanksgiving, so it's good to be here and be part of this tonight. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak to the proposed health and safety budget for the next school year. With regards to the substitute nursing pay, thank you so much, school committee, for approving the increase in the daily rate. This increase is the reason that the line item that is listed has increased. The increased rate will allow us to attract a larger pool of candidates in support of meeting the health needs of students in the absence of our regular school nurses. On the school safety front, we're continuing to request the ALICE training programs for all of our faculty and staff. I earned my ALICE instructor certification over the winter break and value the continued safety education for this district. Additionally, the health and safety budget purchased the Raptor equipment in school year 24. No additional equipment is expected to be needed, and the licensing cost is included in the technology budget.
Thanks, Mariah. So again, you have your executive summary of the health, wellness, and safety budget here. As Mrs. Wicker spoke to, our nurse salary, or excuse me, substitute nurse salary budget is increasing, with our hopes that we'll be able to fill those substitute nursing slots with our new increase and bring in more substitutes for that pool. Again, our supplies and equipment, our contracted services is going down with the change of the Raptor. We don't need any more of the actual system buildup. But we are going to continue to work with Raptor, and the technology budget encompasses the licensing and upkeep for that. We've continued to sort of level fund and look at, it's not level fund, excuse me, small increments based on cost needs. But, you know, the nursing supplies and equipment and the PD are remaining relatively the same from last year.
All
Any
right,
questions?
so
I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on your toes. Any questions?
no worries. Mike, I thought I saw a hand, but it's down.
That was a fake. Sorry.
Psych. All right, Amy Cohen.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I couldn't figure out how to raise my electronic hand. This question is about the debt assessment for the new building project. Could you just put that into context? Has that changed since these numbers were presented at town meeting?
Well, as far as our estimates that were provided at town meeting, and maybe I can speak to this when we get further along, because I have some slides on the debt service a little bit further on.
Okay.
Nothing has changed in the sense since we've presented the actual debt assessment last month. When we presented the estimates on impact to taxpayers and impact to the towns through the process as we were moving closer to a vote for the new high school project, those were estimates that were a combination of the median household assessment in each town, along with the figures that were provided by our financial advisors at the time. And that encompassed all of the borrowing. If you remember, the estimate and the exercise was built on a one-time borrow of everything that would be needed. And we know that we didn't choose that strategy. We're doing it in smaller stages. And also we know that we've received more grant funding from the state, from MSBA, which will also decrease our overall need to borrow over time for the new project. But it only encompasses the first stage of the borrowing for the $30 million bond that was sold back in November.
Great. Dana.
Is there anywhere in this budget that would have like a clothing allowance for each of the individual school nurses? I know that a lot of times they'll reach out during the year saying that, they need supplies for kids that have accidents during the day, or whatever change of clothes would be necessary. And I know like some school nurses have put up like Amazon wish lists for those kind of things. I didn't know if that was somewhere in the budget and they just often run over, or that's not even accounted for at all.
So I wouldn't be able to speak to that specifically. And given that Ms. Wicker is new to the position, let's look into it further. I don't want to say that nurses do or do not use any of their supplies and equipment money for that, but we can look into it further and report back out.
Okay.
I can comment, Mr. Mulcairn, Ms. Ellis, for your benefit. It is an element that where PTOs commonly across the Commonwealth participate as a community service element to support that. Because when it comes to clothing, it can be a little tricky in the nurse's office, depending on the needs of the student. So it is commonly a partnership that's held with PTOs in schools.
Okay, thanks.
All right, looks like we're moving on.
Okay. So it's my pleasure to introduce and also thank Mr. Frieswick, our facilities director, for his diligence in moving the district into cooperative bidding, and you'll continue to see the benefits of that process here this evening. We appreciate the fact that our member towns work with us on capital projects and things like that, but this is strictly the operating budget for our facilities department for FY25 proposed this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Frieswick.
Mr. Mulcairn, I'm going to jump in here real quick and break protocol from our rehearsal. I have to use this moment to put a shout out to Mr. Frieswick, but particularly the entire custodial team that worked so diligently in these most recent days around ever-changing weather conditions so that our children could attend school safely. And I just want to make sure I publicly recognized all those custodians across our district that have done such a great job during some wonky weather times. So thank you, Mr. Frieswick.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. I'm fortunate to have a great team. They always step up to the plate whenever needed. Past couple of days have been a little daunting with the challenging weather, but like I said, they always step up to the plate. I'd like to thank the school committee and the town residents for their continued support in the facilities department and allowing us to provide a safe and healthy learning environment for all the students and staff here in Nashoba Regional. Some important notes here in the budget, the FY25 budget. We've had some contracts, utility contracts, come to the end of life. One of them is the electricity contract, and you'll see there's going to be a 22% increase from FY24 to FY25 in our electricity rates. Also, the natural gas has increased 18% from FY24 to FY25. We have had a reduction in our number 2 heating fuel. That price has gone from $3.06 per gallon for FY24, and it'll go down to $2.64 per gallon in FY25.
Some other things that I want to make sure I point out to the committee, and you can see this in the non-salary department detail section of your budget, highlighted in any section that sort of stands out in yellow. We've put a total of $345,000 worth of offsets towards the facility budget here on the front end. Those are coming from food services, extended learning, and the facilities rentals that are part of our revolving accounts. The reason we're doing this now is to do our very best to take what our estimates are in our cost, apply the offsets at the upfront sort of stage. We know that they're coming in. We know that our extended learning program is going to run and use portions of our facilities and our utilities during the year. We know that our food services department uses portions of our facilities in the sense of utilities. Our custodial staff has to devote a portion of their time towards the food service program every day that school's in session, as well as some of the cleaning supplies. So I had a conversation with the state food services department and ran through sort of like what is the best way to utilize food services for offsets and be conservative. So we're making sure that within limits, regulatory and statutorily, and we definitely are. And so I feel good about the offsets applied at the onset of the budget right now. So you'll see that in the detail. It won't show the offset per se, but the figure that you see in the FY25 proposed column will include any offsets if they're applied.
Any questions about facilities? Mike.
Sorry, I was not quick on the draw to raise my golden hand. So a couple questions. The first question is, I noticed that our scheduled maintenance projects proposed value has dropped significantly, and I'm wondering if that is sort of the money saved for not investing in an aging building before we spend more on the new building. Is that what that is?
Yeah, from FY24 to FY25, there was some money allocated to the high school for different things at the high school. There was also some vehicles vehicle purchases in scheduled maintenance in FY24 that increased that price quite a bit.
And then my other question was going back to the heating fuel. I apologize if my math is wrong, but I use the price per gallon that we use for FY24 and the price per gallon that we're getting in FY25. The savings is significant, but it doesn't, according to my math anyways, which could be wrong, it doesn't account for the entire drop. And I wonder if we're being less conservative than last year, in addition to the lowered cost per gallon of heating fuel.
Mike, are you looking at within the detail of the heating fuel budget, which is in the non-salary section, or are you looking at the system-wide? Excuse me,
I'm on page, let's see, I'm using your shared screen. The FY25 proposed budget facilities, that's the title of the slide.
If you're on the slide that I'm on, that's the executive summary, and heating fuel is broken out between natural gas and the heating oil. So we could certainly look at it in more detail at budget and warrant. I'd be happy to.
Got it. No, that's fine. I just, okay. I didn't know that it was broken down in that way. So thank you.
All right. Looks like everybody's good to go for the next slide.
Substitute teachers. As you're all aware, we have a pending school committee approval for a new rate for our substitutes. We've made the adjustment in the daily substitutes, both which is titled regular, and our long-term substitutes based on some actuals for FY24 to date. If you look back on actuals over the last few years, they're significantly impacted by the pandemic. We had a lot of teachers on leave. We had teachers out for obviously 10 days at a time as people were quarantined for various reasons in the last several years. So our actuals for this year are really driving our estimates for FY25. And we've made a little bit of an adjustment, not only just based on the rates, but also based on where we see the majority of our substitute budget going. So I can answer any questions with regards to substitutes.
Not seeing any, so we'll keep going.
Okay. So our most important department. So I'm happy to introduce our Assistant Superintendent, Laura Friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mulcairn. And thank you, Superintendent Downing, and thank you, School Committee. We really are, in the Department of Teaching and Learning, on behalf of all of our Nashoba educators, so grateful for the support that we continue to receive from the school committee and our larger school community and our town residents. As a result of your collective support and the hard work, the truly hard work of our educators, we continue to make steady progress towards our strategic plan and the implementation and actualization of our Portrait of a Nashoba Graduate, which you can see here reflected on this slide. Before Mr. Mulcairn moves to the next slide, I just like to seize the opportunity to provide you with some quick highlights of the impact of the FY24 budget that I'm proud to share on behalf of our Nashoba community. We continue to make great strides toward continued curriculum alignment and development to reflect our Portrait of a Nashoba Graduate competencies and rigorous high-quality curriculum. To date, we have implemented high-quality instructional materials in K-5 math, 6-8 science, and we are currently hard at work on K-5 literacy, 9-12 science, and K-12 music, as well as the implementation of 2 innovation pathways at our high school, advanced engineering and manufacturing, and business and finance. To help further accelerate our work and provide support to the operating budget, Teaching and Learning successfully secured 6 competitive grants in FY24 to help accelerate and support our work and the work of our strategic plan, including the Summer Acceleration Academy, Deeper Learning, Teacher Diversification, Innovation Pathways Planning, the Genocide in Education Grant, and Open SciEd, totaling $186,865 in competitive grants. The Department of Teaching and Learning is intended to maintain our current growth trajectory of intensive and accelerated work with our curriculum, instruction, assessment, instructional software, PD, and innovation on behalf of our students. And we will continue to remain committed in seeking out competitive grant opportunities to further accelerate our work and offset costs. Next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. In terms of curriculum development, with our FY25 budget requests of note, our requests here are in line with our curriculum review schedule that we worked on and developed and presented to the committee last December 2022, including a focus next year on phase 2 for 9-12 science and music, which is investigate and select, phase 1 world language and digital learning, and phases 1 and 2 for grades 6-12 math. As well, we have included a request here to support specific extension and enrichment task development intended to meet the continuum and spectrum of the needs of all learners. And this would be for those learners who are ready for extension and enrichment. And our intent is to work with the support of the Massachusetts Association of Gifted Education to that end. In terms of our textbook adoption, our adoption line here reflects a request for funds to support the purchase of high-quality curriculum for K-5 literacy, supporting the science of reading and the priorities outlined in our K-5 literacy curriculum review presentation that we shared with the committee in December. These materials would include, from soup to nuts, student materials, teacher materials, online and print modules, skill block, instructional and student materials, authentic text across genres for all students, K to 5, including decodable tests for our developing readers. We'd like the committee to be aware that we have submitted a high-quality instructional materials grant to help offset this request. Beyond our ask for literacy, we have reflected here a decrease in requests for textbooks for middle school science. Our application and successful receipt of the OEI grant has helped defray the costs here as reflected. Next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. In terms of requests in support of professional development, we have an increase in request here from FY24 due to the necessary professional development to support our K-5 literacy adoption. Professional development for onboarding and then sustaining through the year will be important for a successful year 1 implementation, as it was for our K-5 implementation for mathematics with our Bridges in Mathematics implementation year 1 last year. Other requests include requests in connection directly with our strategic plan. As you will see here, connections to the strategic plan include connections to 6 of the 7 initiatives within strategic objective number 2, teaching, learning, and leading, including content and pedagogy focused professional development, specifically including professional development to include continued work with deeper learning and assessment, professional development in support of science 6 through 8 to continue the work there, in mathematics 6 through 12, portrait of a Nashoba educator, technology innovation, and our continued work with social emotional integration. This line also reflects a request to continue our work with our educator evaluation training. This year, we're working with the Research for Better Teaching out of Acton, and we have cohort 1 engaging in analyzing teaching for student results. Our principals and half of the department heads at the high school are part of cohort 1. The ask here will be to complete our work here with cohort 2, completing the training next year. And finally, there's a request here to continue our work with our development and implementation support and training of our professional learning community model with Solution Tree as we continue to work on our district-wide implementation of our multi-tiered systems of support in year 2 next year. And then next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. In terms of instructional software, the requests reflect high usage, high utility, and high curriculum alignment, including multimedia tools to support content creation, instructional tools to support instruction and intervention, and consortium membership to support student data privacy efforts. Our curriculum membership and dues reflect district memberships for state and national core curriculum associations, including MATSAL, for our English Language Department, and EdLeader 21, which is the national organization supporting our continued connections and professional learning with other schools and districts in the nation for our Portrait of a Nashoba graduate and hopefully our Portrait of a Nashoba educator next year, including deeper learning and deeper assessment. In terms of contracted services, in addition to including requests here for multilingual translation services district-wide, which the teaching and learning budget holds, and it was found in our curriculum development line in years past, Mr. Mulcairn has created a contracted services line for us here, which we feel is a more appropriate reflection of the needs here. So in addition to our work to support our multilingual translation and interpretation services district-wide, we also have here a request for funding to support our continued district equity work as we work to implement our district strategy for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as outlined in our strategic plan. The action steps of this work will be informed by our FY24 equity audit outcomes, and the allocation here is intended to provide financial support for these efforts. And then finally, I'd just like to emphasize that our Nashoba community, our Nashoba educators are extremely proud of the work that our faculty and our staff continue to do each and every day. We are deeply grateful for the leadership of our principals and our curriculum directors and our instructional coaches. And we are further appreciative of the support we've received from this committee and from our families. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Teaching and Learning budget. I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mulcairn, who's going to speak to the executive summary, and then we'll be able to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Yes. So thank you, Assistant Superintendent Friend, for the detail on the great work that happens in teaching and learning, which is so tied to the success of our students. As you can see here with the executive summary breakdown, we've added a teaching and learning contracted services line, as Assistant Superintendent Friend spoke to. There's certain things that we do in each of our departments that we want to make sure that they're clear on what type of expense they are. So we've added this line to the teaching and learning department. That's why you don't see a voted amount for FY24. But the translation and equity work that we're going to be doing in FY25 and continuing FY25 is now broken out that way. A quick note on the district textbook adoption offset. Again, if you look in the budget detail that's been provided to you, there's a highlight in yellow. The $200,000 request for the K-5 ELA curriculum adoption, the total estimate is expected to be $400,000. The high quality instructional materials grant that we've applied for would offset that by 50%. So that would be a $200,000 offset. If the total cost of our curriculum adoption is less than that, our grant would be less than that. But the grant is essentially going to pay for 50% of our high quality instructional materials adoption for literacy. So we'll update the committee as we hear anything back with regard to that grant. But at this point, the estimate is $200,000, $400,000 total offset with a grant of $200,000, bringing the cost of $200,000 to the district. So I think that might be a little bit confusing because you hear $200,000 twice. What would be the cost that we pay and what would be the grant? So if there's any questions on that or any other further questions on the teaching and learning budget, I know Assistant Superintendent Friend is here to answer those.
All right, let's start with Scott.
Yeah, thank you. So in looking at the high quality instructional materials you have in the budget, are those textbooks or are they software? What kind of materials are those? And as we continue our curriculum review, can we expect similar kinds of expenditures going forward?
I'll answer the first part of the question, which is all of the above, Mr. Powell. The quotes that we've received, and we're continuing to engage with the curriculum publishers. A decision has not yet been made on which publisher, which curriculum we'll move forward with, but it's soup to nuts, beginning with the needs of our youngest learners and foundational literacy and the kind of instructional materials our teachers would need to provide them with the explicit direct instruction. So teacher materials, and then student materials, including decodable readers, authentic text, instructional modules. There is an online component as well, manipulatives, readers for skill block instruction, which would support tier 2 instruction. I know we've talked about that with the committee so far to date. That would be specific activities to support our win time and our PLC work as we work to provide different levels of intervention for our students across our multi-tiered system of support. So everything. In terms of this cost, I can't anticipate what future costs we're going to be until we engage in the curriculum review cycle across the domains. I will tell you that when we consider the adoption for math and we consider the K-5 math and we consider the cost for 6 through 8 science, just in my time as assistant superintendent here, this cost is much higher than those costs. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I would venture to guess that this is an outlier in terms of the lift for implementation because it's so big and the needs are so great across the core literacy block or building readers, if you will. So the lift there is large.
Great, thank you.
Over to Jackie.
I appreciate that you answered a lot of what I was already going to ask, Superintendent. And I did want to just make an opportunity to pause and ask. I know that's not something that we would have an answer to right now, but I think in particular looking at equity and standardization over the district, that part of the future equity, part of the future curriculum audit, looking at the differences based on the enrichment and items that are purchased through our very generous PTOs across the district and having some sense of whether or not there's differences in our schools.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Reinhardt. And I know, as part of taking a look at the proposal for the equity audit and speaking with the consultants, I know that will be part of the audit and will be outcomes of the audit to assess our current state. I would also just reinforce that, our implementation of these high quality instructional materials really work to support our equity efforts, because it really works to support high quality tier 1 instruction for all learners and does not put our teachers in a position where they're supplementing their first instruction because they have the high quality instructional materials and all that they need in order to provide that. Instead, the intention is for them to be able to spend their energies on working on those tier 2, the what's next, to meet the needs of the learners in their classroom specifically. So our efforts are connected to our high quality instructional materials, and supporting that for tier 1 is a move towards equity, we believe. Yeah.
Thanks. Ross, I have a quick question. You were just saying that you are looking to get a grant for the high quality instructional materials. The number in this spreadsheet reflects, or rather assumes, that you will get that grant?
Correct. Yeah, we built that in as an offset. We did the high quality instructional materials grant application before my time for the adoption of the Bridges math program. And we hear and feel, that we're going to be in good shape with this grant. Again, if the cost of the program that's selected through the curriculum review is $350,000, we'll get half of that through the grant, is my understanding. So we'll update the committee as soon as we can about what our status is with that grant. If for some reason we don't get the grant, we would certainly put forward a proposal that includes whether it needs to be a change or anything else with regards to this, what I think we all feel is a critical curriculum need. So we'll go from there at that time.
All right, great, thanks. All right, so maybe we can just move on now.
Okay, I'd like to introduce our interim pupil personnel services director, Yume Yao, and I know that Superintendent Downing wanted to kick off the beginning of this section of the presentation, so I'll give him a second to get back on camera.
Thank you, Mr. Mulcairn. I appreciate that. This is just to reiterate what I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Pardon me for a moment. Thank you for your patience. We have increased the behavior position at Florence Sawyer by 0.2 of an FTE, increase in special education of 0.5 in Luther Burbank, but again, that was a mid-year hire, so in terms of total cost over the course of the year, it is neutral. With our school psychologist team chair restructuring, and then adding the additional psychologist, the 0.6 savings, and I think I made an error and said 0.8 on a previous slide. It's 0.6 savings of FTE at Nashoba Regional High School, and the instructional assistants help balance out the cost of that school psychologist position. Next slide. this point, I'd like to bring in our interim Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Ms. Yume Yao.
Hi, thank you, Superintendent Downey, for explaining, give the updates for the FY24 personnel changes. And I want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to present the special education budget tonight. I will talk a little bit about FY25 proposed budget. And so what we're, based on the needs of the students increase, we are going to propose the new programs, 3 new programs. The first one is the grade 6 to 8 LEAD program for middle school students. And this is a language-based program. As of now, we have LEAD program in elementary school. We don't have any LEAD program or language-based program in a middle school. The next one is grade 9 to 12 connections classroom in the high school level. And as you can see, both are budget neutral. There's no increase there. The last one is a grade K to 2 connections classroom for elementary school students. This will, we are proposing 1 FTE special education teacher increase. And
go ahead. No, Ms. Yao, please finish.
No, I was going to ask Mr. Malkren to speak the notes piece that he will.
So I'll make some comments on these new programs to bring a little more color to this as well. We're able to bring forward the middle school LEAD program budget neutral with current staffing that we have at Hale Middle School that focuses in on some areas with students that need those language-based supports. And the additional classrooms connections to the high school, we have 2 educators that we needed in recent years at the middle school level. As students have advanced up to the high school, that position is going to advance up because that's where the critical need lies with that program. So that's what makes those 2 positions neutral. And the classroom connections at the elementary school would be a new position. And the benefit of adding that position is by offering that type of program, it really gives us the opportunity to keep kids in district and provide them the direct services that go beyond just the classroom related to the classroom connections program for students that are on the autism spectrum. So that helps us keep students, and when we're able to keep students in district and provide them high quality programming in their area of need, of course, that helps us fiscally. As you know, those programs in added district costs are very costly.
Okay. So just some other notes. Our proposed expenses include changes in student placements and services. We know that throughout the year, our teams need to meet and discuss what is in the best interest for our students with higher need, and that's reflected within the budget. There's a $700,000 offset at the front end, as I've described in other areas of the budget. That should read special education transportation. So if you look in the non-salary budget detail of your budgets, you'll see that $700,000 that we have traditionally been applying out of our IDA grant towards special education transportation continues to be applied here as well. Also from the IDA grant, we're applying $125,000 offset to our contracted services, therapies, and evaluations. So this is when we may have a student in the district that has a need that we don't have personnel for. And it may be one student that needs a service such as vision or orientation and mobility, and we don't have a personnel to provide that service. We contract out for that service, and those are the types of things that are covered under that section of the budget. Also, last year we provided put forward a just over $1 million increase, or actually $1 million. Last year we presented a $1 million offset from circuit breaker in the FY24 out of district tuitions. For FY25, we're increasing that to $1.6 million out of our circuit breaker funding. So here's the special education budget in the executive summary. Again, we have our changes in special education administration. Again, that's because we've shifted the school psychologists out of that line. They are now in the K-13 teachers. They're Unit A, and they are obviously student facing as they do testing and things like that. Our team chairs and our director remain in that special education administration line. Last year, we established the preschool teacher salary line to separate the difference between our school age program and our preschool program. Our preschool program runs exclusively for students with disabilities in an integrated setting. A little bit further down, just again, you can see the total that's being proposed after offset. And if you want to view the offsets in more detail, they're highlighted in yellow in the non-salary details, budget details that you have provided this evening. Superintendent Downey, you want me to answer any questions here, and then we'll move on to your section of the preschool?
You're muted, Kirk.
Thank you. Yes, we'll take questions on this portion of the special education budget.
A quick question for me, Ross. The IDEA grant, are you telling us that you expect it to be about $2.4 million next year?
No, so that I think your figure includes the offsets from circuit breaker. The IDEA grant would include.
Can you go back one slide?
Yep.
Thank you.
So it's $700,000 applied to transportation, and I'll correct this slide afterwards, and $125,000 applied towards contracted services. If you go back, I think probably November or early November, we presented the IDEA grants to the school committee. And you'll see within there, we received just over about $800,000 in IDEA grant money for the 240 grant. This is how we've traditionally spent that money. So we're going to continue to look at, these are entitlement grants. So again, they're federal grants. We know that they will fluctuate a little bit, but not significantly. So we feel confident that these offsets are appropriate given what we've been receiving in previous years for those entitlement grants.
And so just to continue down this line of thinking, thank you for correcting me on that circuit breaker piece, is the 1.6 million, you are going to provide greater amounts from the circuit breaker to special education to offset. Are you expecting the circuit breaker to increase by that much, or are you pulling it away from somewhere else?
Nope. So we're expecting that our circuit breaker that we'll receive next year in FY25 will be increased based on costs from this year. So I've escalated it for that purpose. As the costs for special education go up on mandated services for our students with high need, we want to meet those services. We also have to be fiscally thoughtful and think about our operational budget, and we try to pull as many levers as we can to make sure that we do not impact the operational budget necessarily when we have things available that we can do in the form of whether it's reimbursements or grants.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amy.
Thank you. My question is kind of along the same lines. I'm looking at the 288% increase on the line item for sped transportation, but it also seemed like we were getting a significant offset from a grant. Could you just explain what's behind that significant increase?
I certainly can. I also want to be obviously respectful and mindful of our students here. So, with placement out of the district, whether it be in a collaborative or a day placement, or a private day placement, we obviously have transportation costs that come along with that. So this is our anticipated based on what's happening this year. We are able to use circuit breaker money to offset it if necessary. We are also going to experience an increase in our rates. We work through our collaborative, the Assabet Valley Collaborative. They run the bidding and they run the transportation coordination for a lot of the local districts, as we don't have our own specialized transportation unit within the district. So we'll be putting forward some updates on this if necessary. The bid window for Assabet Valley, which we're a part of, will come to a close on January 22nd. These rates are obviously going to escalate. We've had our contract in place for several years now, and we expect to see some escalation in costs. not just because of the student need, but also just in rates.
Okay, so this is like, we're mandated to provide this transportation for students who need.
Absolutely, just as much as we're mandated to provide the service. If it's out of our, even if it's within our district, and a student is going to one of our programs that might not be in their hometown, they might be entitled to transportation. And certainly if they're going to a collaborative or a private placement, they're entitled to transportation as well.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And I had just one other question related to SPED. Are you able to tell us what percentage of our Nashoba enrollment is using special education services?
Not off the top of my head, but I wonder if that might be a topic for sort of another future agenda, Superintendent Downing.
Are you talking about specifically, you said services? Do you
I'm
mean
just trying to
transportation services?
I guess what I'm trying to do is look at the line item totals for special education and then tie it to number of students.
Yeah, you really can't do that, because what we're talking about here are out of district tuitions. So those are very intensive needs, as opposed to costs that we have for our special educators that we carry in the budget. And then with our transportation, those are very specific to what 5 students whose programs can be provided within, say, the interior radius. So like there's transportation radiuses in terms of cost models. And if your 5 placements live within a close radius, it's less expensive than a far radius. So that's where making those equivocations straight over to enrollment don't really tell an accurate story.
Okay. Is that also true for the whole category as a whole for special education?
No, I think we're seeing an increase here this year, because I let me acknowledge what I'm feeling, Ms. Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
If you just give me a second.
Take your time.
Thanks again, everybody, for your patience with me tonight. With that increase up to just over $1 million, these are costs that come to us since we last voted a budget, and we have to understand that there's multiple factors that come along here. Some of these factors are, we have students within our own system that we've been educating, and they've come to a point where we've made determinations through team processes that are done in conjunction with families and educators that they need to have their needs met in more intensive ways in programs out of our district. We also have students that have moved in since our last budget cycle. Or while there's provisions that are written into the law that we can bill back services during the year in which they move, we have to budget them in the fiscal years after that. So this number really reflects some of that element as well. So the increased costs that we have here really are a result of multiple things coming together all at the same time. Mr. Mulcairn explained about the increase in transportation negotiations that we fully expect, as well as the increase in special ed tuitions that we've talked about. So we're in a scenario here in Nashoba where all of those factors came together in one confluence in a single year that really stands out in the budget.
Thanks, Kirk. Scott has one more question.
Yeah, I think we're almost there as far as me understanding the big increase in the SPED transportation budget. It sounds like what you're saying is our current year, we're already experiencing some of these costs, but it wasn't voted on last year. So the increase looks bigger because they're in the 24, we're paying for it in 24, but it wasn't in the budget. And so, for example, we might be spending $500,000 this year, but some of it we're getting charged. I'm sorry, I'm muddling the question. The bottom line is we already have some of this expense and it just wasn't in the budget, right?
Yeah, I understand. So Mr. Powell, I'm going to answer your question in 2 ways. One way is for students who were already students to the Nashoba Regional School District, of which those decisions came after the last budget cycle. Yes, we are incurring those costs in this year's budget cycle. For those students who lived outside of our district last year that came to us this year, no, we're not living those costs this year because we can bill them back to their previous district, but we do have to plan for them going forward. So it's both in that scenario.
But those are the two factors that are playing a large part in the increase, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, looks like that was it for that section. We can keep going, Ross.
Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Superintendent Downing, who's going to take a look at our preschool.
So in anticipation of this section, this is where I get to do a lot of talking, my friends. So I have a backup throat lozenge. I have a fresh glass of water. Let me see if I can get through this. Mr. Mulcairn and Miss Yao will be there for me if I need to take a quick break. So one of the things that we're looking at is our current preschool setup and how we're servicing the needs of our students as well as our community. In the process of the past year, I've had a chance to do a lot of conversations, listening sessions with families and educators around the needs of our school system. And one of the things that we've learned, and I know it's come to the attention of some of our school committee members, is that there's a real demand and need in our area for preschool education of students, that there just isn't enough to meet the demand that's out there. And at the same time, we're looking at how are we servicing the needs of our students within the Nashoba Regional School District for students in our integrated preschools. Now, I said integrated preschools. I want to explain what an integrated preschool is. So on this slide here, you can see an integrated preschool is made up of students who have identified needs through an IEP, an individualized education plan, along with tuition-based peers who do not have an IEP. And the regulations of these programs are that no preschool classroom can exceed the number of 20 students. Also, in addition to that, if there are greater than 5 students with an IEP in any one classroom, that class size cannot exceed more than 15 students. And you must maintain an IEP ratio of less than 50% IEP students in an integrated preschool classroom. So the result of that is in a 15-student classroom, you can maximize your ratio by having 7 students with an IEP, allowing for 8 tuition-based role models in the class. In a 20-student classroom, you would only be able to have 5 students on IEPs with 15 tuition-based role model slots. Next slide, Mr. Mulcairn. Excuse me, man. So when we look at our current state, we have in Stowe a 5-day full-day program and a 3-day half-day program. In Bolton, we have a 5-day half-day program and a 3-day half-day program. And in Lancaster, we have 2 sections of the 3-day half-day program, along with our Little Friends program, which is an intensive need program that integrates with the 3-day half-day program. So when you lay out our model and you look at the enrollment here, you'll notice going across the first row, the 3-day half-day program, there is a total, excuse me, excuse me. And this needs to be adjusted. This was an old model that I grabbed it from. That would be 4 sections because we have 4 sections of the 3-day half-day program. It's 5 total half-day. So this should read 4 sections with the total tuition slots. Forgive me, this is going to be slightly, but it's going to be to our benefit because I'm seeing the error in the model now. But based on 5 sections, there would be 40 tuition slots. We currently have 36 enrolled students, total of 35 special education slots, of which only half of those are utilized. In our 5-day half-day program, all 7 of our slots are currently utilized. In the 5-day full-day program, we have 1 open slot that is my understanding is going to be filled very soon. When you look at the totals of that with putting in the estimated tuition relief, you can see the potential for revenue coming in via tuitions in this model is $261,000 rounded, with tuition relief and the actuals looking around 220 right now. Next slide. When you look at the approximate staffing costs of that, taking an average of our current teaching staff of approximately $90,000 with 7 IAs, administration costs, and the community and family, the family community education grant offset of $45,000 and the tuition offsets, the operating budget is carrying approximately $492,000 in salaries in the budget annually. Well, we're crafting a new program for the future, and that involves, next slide, please, 2 programs: eliminating the 3-day tuition program altogether and just having 5-day half-day programs and 5-day all-day. What I would like to be clear about this is that in the IEP process, if it's determined that the needs of the student are only for 3 days, we would still allow that student to participate in the 5-day half-day program. They would just attend 3 days a week. But what this will do is it opens up for our 5-day half-day slots, which are in much demand. We've had people turn down the 3-day half-day programs because they can't get their personal schedules and their work schedules to line up in ways they could take advantage of it. So as we look at the possibility of this and look at the space of our schools, we would be able to dedicate 2 classrooms in each of our elementary schools to these programs. And you can see we would be able to offer 6 sections of the 5-day half-day program. That's 15 tuition slots, 90 total seats for the 5-day half-day program. In the 5-day full-day program, we would be able to offer 30 seats. We currently offer 8. So when you look at the total revenue that would generate, you would see that estimating based on the ratio of tuition relief there, $70,000, the total would be $707,000 coming in revenue for preschool. When we look at what the staffing costs of that model would look like, using the same numbers I did before, with a little bit of increase in the admin costs, and I'll explain that in a moment, you can see the actual burden to the operating budget goes down significantly to $336,000. So the current budget that is in front of you tonight carries 2.8 teacher salaries and 10 instructional assistants. What's important to note is that in staffing classrooms that are 15 students and lower would maintain their current staffing standard rate of 1 teacher and 1 instructional student. Once classes exceed 15, a second instructional assistant would be added to that classroom so that we are able to maintain the proper and regular ratios that are required for integrated preschool programs. We also would looking to bring in a new position, which would be our early childhood director. And the early childhood director would oversee the entire preschool program and supporting the Pupil Personnel Services Department. It would be an administrator position with evaluation responsibilities for all preschool staff and would be responsible for managing the budget and associated grants to the program. Currently, the administrative costs that we have right now for the program are offset by the CFCE grant, and we would continue to do that. This person would also chair all the team meetings for preschool and kindergarten students, and the cost would be offset with those tuition-based enrollments. So as our coordinator is not currently carried in this budget, our director would be offset by the tuition revenue that would come in. So to sum up, this is basically what it would mean. I'm getting there. It would reduce the operating budget costs by approximately $155,000. As you can see here on the bottom line of these two models, the FY24 budget has a cost of $492,000 fully actualized, and under our proposed model, it would be $336,000 actualized. So this is a win-win-win for our preschool program. We will be able to increase preschool opportunities to our families significantly, from 48 to 90 slots in our half-day program. And those half-day programs would be 5-day half-day programs, not 3-day. And the full-day slots would increase from 8 to 30. We know from our waiting list there's a significant demand for this. I think what's also really important to note here is that this would also give us in Nashoba a real opportunity to work with our preschool age students prior to them coming to kindergarten in Nashoba, which would really increase our ability to prepare and get them ready for entry into elementary school. So what's up next for the preschool? We are going to be publishing the tuition-based slots for preschool in the next 2 days. There's going to be a sign-up period. During this period, we're going to calculate the anticipated revenue based upon the interest that we garner from families over the next 2 weeks. We will update this committee on the budget with those tuition offsets at the February 7th meeting, and we'll present that to you at that time. So I'm going to stop at this moment and take any questions regarding the preschool offsets.
All right, so we have a lot of interest in this one. We thank you for that, Kirk. Let's start with Mike.
Kirk, thank you for that. I really appreciate both the thought that went into this and the way that you presented it. I just want to make sure that I understand from the 10,000-foot view. We are spending more on personnel, but in doing so, we are able to increase the number of slots available, and so the net result is a increased revenue through the preschool program. Is that about right?
That is correct. Mr. Mulcairn, if you can back up a slot. I think your point is outlined right here, Mr. Haresh. And so, as you see, yes, the program will be much more significant in cost. However, the difference in tuition offsets is almost $490,000 annually, fully realized, I would like to remind the committee. And so the operating budget would be offset, and it would provide that $150,000 of relief to the current number that you're looking at. We, of course, as I say, fully actualized. We got to go through this interest and registration process over the next couple of weeks to get that number, but we feel confident that we'll get a significant amount of the way there.
So we went from 48 slots to potentially a maximum of 90 slots. Is that
we actually have, for the half-day slots, yes.
Right. And then for the full day, it's from 8 to 30. How were you able to estimate those increased slots? In other words, how do you know to estimate the number of staff that you should increase by given the demand of the program?
Well, what we're doing is showing the model of what's out there. Do we think we could fill 30 full-day slots based upon what past lotteries have been? Yes, I think we could.
Great. Thank you.
Dana.
Okay, a couple questions. So there'll still be a lottery, correct? That would still be the
Yes.
process. Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
Are the hours changing at all? Are they increasing
No.
at all with the half-day programs? So it's still
No.
8:45 to 11:15-ish?
Correct.
And who's currently in the role or doing the job of the early childhood director?
Ms. Ellis, I want to thank you because I should have started out that way. So you're doing your superintendent right here. So Ms. Kristen Ryan is currently our preschool coordinator. She came to Nashoba this year from the Air Shirley School District and has done a fabulous job. I want to say that this is not a construction of your superintendent's making, rather between Ms. Ryan, Ms. Yume Yao, and myself. We've had several meetings to talk about what are the possibilities. But our coordinator came to us and said, we have a real need to do a 5-day, half-day program because for our families whose students do require services 3 days a week, they're looking for more. And this is going to give us an opportunity to provide those students more services as well.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Jackie.
That was my question. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of everything that's been presented. To what extent are we factoring in the potential impact on special education currently? The more time students are spending in structured school settings with high quality educators and highly trained educators who can detect and understand, like some of the real significant increases that we've seen in our 0 to 5 population over the past several years. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I can't speak to data on that in a moment's notice, Dr. Reiner. What I can tell you are in the listening sessions that I've had with our educators in the preschool realms, they are spending a lot of time in those formative skills with students to get them prepared for school. And so, we're a couple of years out of pandemic times now. And so the profile looks different. And there is a lot of need to get into some of those fundamental skills around school readiness. This is, I think, going to have a significant impact, fully realized, on helping the students of our 3 towns be ready for kindergarten.
I think maybe you may. Do you want to jump in?
Yes, I'm trying to find the hand raise I couldn't find. Now, I want to also mention just the special education piece, the slots. Originally, this also was the tuition increase by this model also because the early intervention, the projected number we're getting each year. So current year, Kristen Ryan and I both are new. However, we looked into the number from EI. And it's very high. And so far, Kristen Ryan has had a lot of home visits so that she kind of get an idea of the student needs, meaning that we are sure, as you saw the number that Superintendent Downey has just presented, we basically don't have any slots left this year for 5 half days and 5 full days. So that is what we need based on the number we got from EI. We already got 11 from them. We also have 2 from parent referrals and 1 from a move-in. So altogether is 14. And now Kristen Ryan, all the home visits she has made really is telling us the number, the space slots that we need for 5 half days and 5 full days are going to really increase. Not really the 3 half day program is in need at this time. So we met with Kristen, me, and Superintendent Downey. We all met together several times to come up with the model. This presented model right now is that to meet the needs of the students, special education students in this regional district, as well as thinking of how to help with the offset some of the operational budget. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think for any members of our community, like that is an important piece. So I really appreciate the 2 of you taking the time to explain that. Thank you.
Over to Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is not necessarily of a budgetary or fiscal nature. And in prefacing my question, I like to think, and I'll emphasize the word think, that I understand the compelling interests and the statutory mandates that are addressed in creating an integrated preschool program. But going back to the first slide, and just for my own edification, are we referring now to, when you're talking about children who are on IEPs, they can certainly be lumped into a category known as neurodivergent or neurodiverse. And those who are not IEP, not associated with an IEP, are sometimes referred to as neurotypical. So are we referring, just for my own edification, are we referring to the neurotypical as role models in our integrated preschool system?
Yes.
Yes. No, it would be a little bit more nuanced than that, because just as an opportunity to share, if we're using really important words that may not mean things to certain people in this space. When we use the word neurodiverse, we're really truly from like a disability and more of a diagnostic standpoint. Autism, spectrum disorders, attentional disorders, and dyslexia. So we would not be including students who are identified for special education for a developmental delay due to like significant language delays, children with fine and gross motor weaknesses. So it's an important distinction, and I really appreciate Mr. Gleason bringing in a very important term, but to be able to separate out, we're not saying this is not neurotypical and neurodivergent. It's a little more nuanced, I think, than that.
Well, in that regard, then could somebody define for me what the term role model means then?
Yeah, this is a term that's used with the students. It basically means this: if you don't have an IEP. So it could read just as easily students with IEPs, students without IEPs. So it's used in terms of the conversations that we have with DESE as our IEP students along with role model students. So that's the terminology that's used there.
Yeah, and within that cohort model, you will have role model students who have diagnoses and disabilities. They don't require special education to make effective progress. So that's what's really wonderful about an integrated model, is you will have students who require special education and students who don't, but benefit from access to and exposure to.
So does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I like I say, I'm just looking to get a definition of the term role model. I have a working understanding of what that means, and so I want to thank the superintendent and you may for and Dr. Reinhardt for clarifying what the term means. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Great. I have a quick question for you, Kirk. I'm not sure, perhaps this is me just misunderstanding. I always worry about maxing out our programs with role model students and then possibly getting ourselves into a situation where we don't have seats for, say, a special education preschooler who moves into district in January. So can you just speak a little bit about scarcity for our SPED preschoolers?
Mr. Mulcairn, can you back up? So as we look at our available seats, you can see right here that the most dominant program is the 3-day half-day program. We haven't even filled up 50% of those seats, but we're limited on the 5-day half-day and the 5-day full day. This opens up the 5-day half-day program to 30 seats. If all the students that we had now were in the program, we'd have 24 out of 30. We actually, if it was exactly a straight year to year over, it'd be 26 out of 30, because we actually have a couple of 2 half-day, 5-day program students in the full-day program, because this actually opens up seats to address your concern.
Thank you.
And what I want to emphasize too is I'm presenting you the maximum scenario. Ms. Ryan, along with Ms. Yao, would manage that based upon the enrollment information that they get in and how we develop those sections. And we won't know that exactly until we understand the demand.
So, I might be speaking out of turn here, but are you also projecting out for the high school allowances, like when the new building comes online?
Oh, you're playing to the band now. Yes, this is in preparation to ultimately the preschool programs that we will be housing at our high school. As Miss Yao mentioned earlier, Miss Ryan has been visiting households as part of her responsibilities as preschool coordinator and sees a demand and need in our communities that will need to be addressing in the future. So yes, it will help with that. What is nice is right now we have one preschool program. It's an AM PM program at Florence Sawyer School. We'd be able to have two if fully actualized in this model, because we will have 3 first grade sections at Florence Sawyer. But in the future, those spaces will close and we will need them at the high school.
All right, let's go over to Amy Cohen.
Could you also clarify how the clarification between tuition-based slots and sped slots, what's covering the cost of the sped slots? There was a slide, I think.
Our budget, the way we have to look at it is just total students in the program and the cost to educate. So we don't disaggregate out the two categories, disaggregate the two categories. So it is, like we said, that's why they are offsets.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Would you mind backing up a slide or two? Because I think I actually saw it designated that way. And that's the only reason I used those.
Yeah, in the double table where it shows the preschool restructuring impact, this is where you can see where the tuition offset line is. So you can see what the estimated cost of the programs would be for personnel and just the offsets that tuitions would bring in towards that.
It wasn't this slide, but I hear what you're saying. It was the one that was just, keep going. There we go. Tuition slots, special education slots. That's really
that just expresses the ratios there of availability.
Okay.
All right, let's go to Sharon.
I'm just looking for some clarification. I think that earlier something was said about a child who is in or perhaps needs a space for 3 days in the preschool program would be included in the 5-day preschool program. So does that mean that they would then be able to attend all 5 days, or are they enrolled as a 3-day student in a 5-day program?
If you have an IEP that is written for 3 days of services, you would have the option to attend for 5 days, but you would have to pay for those 2 additional days. We are moving to this program because as Ms. Ryan is working with the students and families, what she's coming to find out is the need really is for a 5-day half-day program, because the 3-day program, as you know, if it's existing on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, there's a 4-day lag that happens every weekend where it's sort of a resetting of skills each week. So with this is going to give us the ability to work with families and write more IEPs to the 5-day half-day program to address those needs.
So we would be offering more students a 5-day IEP?
I can't say that definitively, Ms. Pock, because it's not a team meeting. Mm-hmm. That all has to be handled in the team meeting setting. This just gives us the option to do that.
May I ask another question? So I guess what I'm wondering about is, or my concern is, continuity in those classes. If there were children that were coming for 3 days, then are there some that are coming for 2 days on the days that those other children aren't there? How do you keep consistency for those classes?
They would attend the days that they attend. Just as students are absent in classes now, they would be absent students on those days.
Thank you.
All right, it seems we have run our course on this topic, and thank you everybody for your questions. We can now move on to the next item.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce Sue Chi, who's our technology manager in the district, and I'll turn it over to him for his notes, and we'll take a look at the budget.
Hi, hello everyone. Good evening. Thank you for your continued support for the district and spending time with us. It's such late hour. So the tech budget is quite straightforward. With your help, hopefully we can get through it quick. So there's no major change in FY25 compared to FY24 regarding the things we request. So there are three major categories. The first one is contracted services. Under that item, the majority of the cost is a connection, the internet connection and the internal connection between schools. So through the E-rate program, we were able to secure a much better deal for the next 3 years. If you look at the cost, we were able to save almost like 30%, which is very good for us. So the next item is hardware. In that item, the major things are the student equipment, like the one-to-one Chromebooks, the iPad for the lower grade, the teacher laptops, and the classroom projectors, interactive smartboard, that kind of stuff. So next, like a major item is the software. Under there is all the software we use for school operation, the business operation, the technology operation. So one thing we're doing now is try to consolidate different platforms. Different services, we kind of use different softwares. Right now, we try to consolidate to as light as possible, so it has a better data integration and also better management for us. So another thing we do is on a yearly basis is we renew all the software usage with teacher learning department, try to reduce the one we do not use or don't use much, and also see how much license we use. So by doing that on a yearly basis, we were able to cut down some cost. So if you look at those are the three major items. The other two kind of small items. If you look at the overall cost, we were able to reduce the budget by a little bit, which actually surprised myself. So that's it. So any questions?
Anything on the tech budget? We love parentheses. Thanks, everyone. Let's move on.
Thank you, Chi.
Thank you, Chi.
I believe we still have, yes, I see our athletic director, Tanya Rich, who is squeezed between events in her office right now. So I'm going to turn it over to our athletic director to present her budget for next year. Go ahead, Tanya.
Thanks, Mr. McCurran. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to present tonight. As Mr. McCurran said, I'm running from a hockey rink and a wrestling match, but I am here. I also want to thank you for your continued support for athletics within our district. We are very excited to start girls golf and boys volleyball this spring as a result of our FY24 budget. A few things I just want to highlight as connections to our strategic plan in the district. We continue to work on our new mascot rebranding to help strengthen school spirit and promote our Nashoba Wolves identity. In our proposed budget, we're looking to update some signage and a new windscreen with the wolf mascot. But in addition, uniform and equipment updates are included in the operating budget and revolving accounts as we continue to upgrade uniforms and anything that has the old mascot on it that we can within our budget. Also, I do want to make a note that some of our rebranding is on a pause due to our new building project. For example, the banners in the gym and also our turf field logo. That's something that we'll update when it's time to replace the turf. Those are things that we're not jumping on right away as we rebrand. Also, I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we've done this year and hope to continue next year with our focus on professional development for our coaching staff and our teams. Our coaches, we did a coaches retreat this year through core trainings where we focus on character-based leadership skills, relational leadership, the how and why of value-based leadership. And we discussed the values of us as a coaching staff and how we look at the values of our teams. I do just want to have a little quick shout out to thank Assistant Superintendent Friend. She attended our coaches retreat and enjoyed some of the activities we did with our coaching staff. So I appreciate her support that evening back in August on a Friday night. Also this year, we're also working with all of our teams and coaches each season, and we're doing in-season workshops on leadership and character building with all of our teams. So those are just some connections to our strategic plan. And then our overall athletic budget, I'll turn it over to Mr. McKern, and then I can answer any questions as well.
Yep, absolutely. So again, as our athletic director spoke to with regards to the rebranding, this conversation that Ms. Rich and I had already, we know that a significant amount of rebranding will happen with the construction of the new high school. So we're certainly pausing anything that would be in building at Nashoba Regional High School. The turf field, we talked about that during the 5-year capital layout back in December. And we know that that's coming in the next few years, but we wouldn't touch that until we do a full turf renovation or resurfacing rather. A couple other things to note: we've added assistant coaches to the budget this year. As you can see, FY24 did not have assistant coaches. You know, in our conversation with Ms. Rich in budget building, but also a little bit during the interest-based bargaining and learning more about our coaches and the stipends and things like that. You know, we feel like those behind the scenes support people who not only support the team and the efforts they have towards a successful season, but they so often get connected to our kids. They're the ones who are, you know, on the sidelines or on the side during drills, checking in with kids, and can really be just a huge support for our students as people and not just as athletes. So we're happy to bring that forward as a request this year. A couple other things to note: the athletic transportation increases are per our contractual rates, like I talked about with our busing for our yellow school buses, and that's the athletic budget as of today. We can take any questions for either me or for our athletic director.
All right, thanks for that, guys. Not seeing any golden hands. And so I think we can move on. Thanks, Tanya, for being here in your busy schedule.
That was Rich. Okay, Superintendent Downing is back up to introduce our buildings, and I'll be talking about the budgets for each of those.
Thank you, Mr. Mulcairn. Let's talk about Nashoba Regional High School. The first thing I have up here is the estimated enrollment table for you for next year. The red numbers that you see here, these are just the magic projection numbers that I presented to this committee before based on our 5-year rolling averages of grade level changes that happen. And we know that at 9th grade, that 241 represents the number of 8th graders that we have today that are advancing to 9th grade, knowing that our 5-year average over the last 5 years indicates about 46 of those students would be going on to other programs other than Nashoba Regional High School. So when we look at the adjustments that we had to make this year in FY24, we had a resignation in the English department. That teacher, we didn't fill that position. We increased our 0.6 teacher in the department to 1.0. Thus, the department had a decrease of a 0.6 English. And we made up for that because, and this one was just an accounting fix. In world languages, we used to offer Latin, and the employee that taught those courses is now just teaching strictly in the English department. And so we just moved those FTE over from world language to English where it belongs. That is something that could have happened several years ago. We also shifted 0.4 FTE from social studies to English. And then we also shifted one social studies teacher into the academic support center. While we've been running that academic support center for a couple of years now, the FTE always lived in social studies, and we just think it's more accurately reflected if we see it in the academic support center as they work in the bridge program. So this just, those shifts more accurately reflect where the actual FTEs are. There's nothing fiscally substantive to those shifts. So overall, there's a decrease in 0.6 staffing at the high school. The only adjustments we're making for next year, I described to you earlier, is the 1.0 special education increase at the high school for the High School Connections program. That is a shift from Hale Middle School of one of our Connections positions to go to the high school to travel with the needs of our students. Next.
Okay. So what we've done here, obviously the breadth and length of the high school budget is long, so we've consolidated the costs here so they're easy to read. But as you can see, we have our increases. If you look into more detail within the high school non-salary budget, you can see any updates that are provided. There's no real significant changes in costs. One thing that you may note is within the science budget, there's an increase for contracted services. I'd like to thank the department chair, Linda Pierre, and also Rob Frieswick, who's our facilities director, in working collaboration to build out a little bit of a chemical disposal plan, as this is not something that's been addressed in the past, and we're certainly addressing it now. So as things are used at the high school in the science department, we certainly need to make sure we follow regulations and best practices, and we're going to be continuing to do so moving forward.
All right, everybody, any questions on the high school?
One more slide there, Mr. Mulcairn.
Oh, excuse me.
This is just a breakdown of the FTE as it appears, and this will be a part of the budget book as well. So we won't talk to this slide, but there's the visual support of what we talked about.
Quite fancy. Thank you for that.
Okay, so Luther Burbank Middle School, we talked about the special education strategy this year. We want to keep that position at a 1.0, so that would be a 0.5 increase in special education. We do not expect to see any section changes at Luther Burbank Middle School. You'll notice that there's one box in blue on that table. That's to signify that's where Spanish is taught in our middle schools at the 8th grade, which is why the 8th grade has 5 sections as opposed to a 4-section rotation. Spanish lives within the core rotation of classes. Mr. Mulcairn.
Okay. So here's the executive summary of the proposed Luther Burbank middle school budget for FY25. You can see some of the slight changes in salary costs due to personnel. The special education position that Superintendent Downing just spoke about, that is housed and comes from the special education budget, so you wouldn't see that reflected here necessarily. With all other FTEs remaining consistent over at Burbank, looking at the non-salary sections, again, as we begin to look at the middle schools and elementary schools over the next several slides, you'll recall that we were using a per pupil allotment for a lot of our budgeting that we began back in FY23. We continued this year, and we're presenting again moving forward. What this does is it allows us to, put some leveling across our middle schools and then our elementary schools. So principals know, based on their enrollment, they have a certain amount per pupil in each of these types of areas, such as office supplies, textbooks, art, PE, and things like that we already have established as we begin our budget season.
All right, is there one more slide?
Yes, there is.
Beautiful. Any questions on Luther Burbank? All right, let's keep rolling.
Thank you.
We'll now take a look at the center school. This is where you'll notice a couple of different colors in the center school. The red line is the projected averages. You can see we hardly have any changes at center school enrollment year over year. They're very, very minimal. The second grade class is currently 5 sections, and that class is advancing to 3rd grade where they will become 4 sections. Thus, we do not need that 5th section of 2nd grade. However, in this budget, we did not decrease that position, because if you look at this, excuse me. All right. The position, I should say, in 2nd grade that is decreasing will be shifting over to the Mary Rowlandson Elementary School, and we'll talk about that when we get to the Mary Rowlandson slide. The yellow slide in grade 5 indicates that we currently have 4 sections in grade 5. It's possible we will only need 3, as the number is hovering right around the fence line, if you will, of needing 3 to 4 sections. So it's plausible that that would be not utilized at the center school. And then also, this is where the addition of the primary connections program, which is a budgetary addition in the special education department to work with students on the autism spectrum in the primary grades. Mr. Mulcahy.
Yep. So a couple of things to note. Superintendent Downing just talked about a section that would transfer to Mary Rowlandson as their enrollment has increased, and looking at our class size standards for elementary school. The net change that you see there is not necessarily just because of that one position, of course. Some of you are aware that we had a significant amount of retirements at the end of last school year. So there's a little bit of a budget adjustment for that as well. It's not just about that one position that's shifting within our operating budget from one building to another. Again, this is where we see our class size, where we see our per pupil allotments come into play with our principal asked. They're given their budget, and anything beyond that, they can certainly request. But again, not many major changes here, just a little bit of a decrease as a little bit of an enrollment decrease at the center school. So I can take any questions on that. And I'll certainly put up the center school slide.
All right, not seeing any golden hands. Oh, one. Karen, go ahead.
I'm just going back one slide. I just have a question. And I'm sorry, maybe you explained this and I missed it, but what is the extracurricular advisors is going down quite a bit? Is that?
Yeah. No, thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Devine. So the previous principal had, I think, in for people to expand extracurricular programs, had put in several requests that just did not come to fruition, unfortunately. I know that, during my time as principal at the center school, we were always trying to ask people, could you try something? Could you do this? Or, I put in for this type of a club, what we could call what you're doing that type of a club, if you're interested. So across the elementary level, there's not a significant amount of the extracurricular opportunities, but we continue to obviously encourage people to do that. That's why you're seeing that change. That number that you're seeing now is much more in line with what I used to experience as the principal of the center school. So there was a lot of asks for this year that haven't come through, obviously, because they're not being filled. So we're sort of back to what is happening now in budgeting for FY25.
Great, thanks. All right, everybody, we're going to keep going. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Ross. Dana has a question.
Yep.
Sorry, is that typical across all of the elementary schools to not have a lot of extracurricular activities?
I think with whether it be people's personal schedules or potentially also at the secondary level, you are building clubs out based out of kids finding their interest in courses and what's offered. So at the high school, there's a lot of connection between our extracurricular and our courses. Certainly, we try to promote them as much as possible. But again, I'll look back to my time, and we can certainly take a look at each request of the building. But there's not a significant amount at the elementary level. A lot of our students are obviously going off to activities and things like that in the evening, and they either go home or go to the extended learning program in the afternoon.
Yeah, the big trade-off on this also is that in the elementary middle school arena is where they're taking advantage of our extended day services, and a large number of students are getting extracurriculars through their extended day activities.
I have one more question.
Oh, go ahead, Dana.
Is there, and I don't know if I haven't seen it yet or if it's coming, is there somewhere about extended learning in the budget and what that looks like?
So the extended learning proposed budget is really just a reflection of what we expect out of the revolving. So it's not part of the operating budget, but it's included in the very back of your materials that were shared with you. And I'd be happy to address that either at budget and warrant or through whatever other channels.
And that's
Yeah,
because
I
it's
just
self-supporting, right, Ross?
Correct. It doesn't exist in our operating budget. That's correct.
okay. I know that we talked before about there just being such a need for more spots for that.
Yep.
So I just didn't know if
Yep.
there was a place
Yep.
that we could offset that or help that in any way in the operating budget.
Yeah, and once we're sort of through tonight, and we'll also have the rates are on the agenda for later this evening. So once we get through this evening, I'll circle back with Bridget Hannigan, who is our director of extended learning, and she and I will take a look at that. And again, I think, as I said at the last school committee meeting, certainly dependent upon staffing ratios and space. Physical space is obviously part of it.
All right, on to Hale.
Okay. Hale Middle School is pretty straightforward here. You can see the enrollment chart, and again, Spanish taught in the middle schools. We didn't have to make any adjustments this year to the Hale Middle School. We talked about the middle school LEAP program being our language-based program that is budget neutral. And there'll be a decrease in 1.0 special education as the Connections program moves to the high school. Mr. Mulcairn.
Yep, thank you. Again, not any significant changes as the Hale enrollment has gone down. Their budgets based on per pupil allocations are obviously reflected here. To the point made earlier with regard to extracurricular, we're basing it off of what's running this year. So with some decrease in some things that are running, that budget is going down a little bit as well. And then again, our salaries remain stable there as that special education position lives in the special education budget.
Any questions on Hale? All right, everybody, keep going.
Hey, as we look at Mary Rowlandson Elementary here, we have a few things to talk about. In this budget, we've added 3 positions. They're all grade level positions at Mary Rowlandson Elementary. When you look at the projected averages, it just so happens that Mary Rowlandson does grow over time in our 5-year averages. Currently, we're sitting at 72 students in the 3rd grade, 71 in the 4th grade. If the growth happens at the rates that they have in previous years, we would be at 75 per classroom in the 4th and 5th grade, which would necessitate us having 4 sections in the 4th and 5th grade. And so it's wise of us to prepare for that right now. In addition, we budgeted last year for 3 sections of K at Mary Rowlandson when I told the story about we actually realized at 4. And so we would need to add that back into the Mary Rowlandson budget. We talked about the increase in art and PE as well. So that would just need to be then realized in the actual budget. In this, the 3 sections that are added to Mary Rowlandson go back to my conversation about center school, 1 FTE, the 5th section of 2nd grade. That doesn't mean a 2nd grade teacher. It just means an FTE in the building would shift over to Mary Rowlandson, which meaning we're adding in reality 2 sections to the Mary Rowlandson staff there.
And as Superintendent Downing said, obviously the increase in staffing is reflected within the teacher salary line, knowing that we saw a decrease in another building as that FTE moves over. Again, some of the extracurricular advisors to the note made earlier, just decreasing a little bit based on what's happening now. And if you look across the board, some of the other decreases, and we have a budget issue here. Hold tight, please. Something's going on with that. I am going to revisit this slide with school committee at the next meeting because for some reason these FY25 are not showing here. So let me get back to school committee on what's happening there and why those zeros are coming through. Because again, those are based on enrollment and our per pupil expenditures. And I apologize for not recognizing that or seeing that ahead of time, but I'll get back into the budget and make sure we clean that up.
All right, everybody, not seeing any hands. We're going to keep going.
Okay, looking at Florence Sawyer School. We did actually, we had 3 sections of kindergarten at Florence Sawyer School, even though we had 4 in the budget. So they would be advancing into first grade, meaning that we can reduce first grade by a section next year. And then also the current 4th grade, which is 3 sections, is advancing to 5th grade. So they will only need 3. So that current 4th grade section will go back to 3rd grade, back to 4th grade. However, you can see they're right on that threshold of 96 of possibly needing a 5th section at Florence Sawyer. So the reduction of the first grade section, we actually would reserve in the budget right now in the event that we need to add a 5th section of 4th grade, and we would make that determination. But again, I'll tell the committee it's wise of us to keep that section into the budget today, because based on our 5-year enrollment averages, we're going to be hanging right on that line of needing that section at the end of the year. So that makes it a neutral budget change for the Florence Sawyer School.
Okay, and as Superintendent Datton just stated, again, that kindergarten position that was shifted this year, in reality, is obviously back into the budget, as we're going to continue to propose those sections. And again, everything else is more or less based off of those per pupil expenditure allotments given to the buildings based on their enrollment. Mr. Bates is obviously in a unique position as a K-8. So at certain levels, there's 1 per pupil expenditure for the art supplies per se. And at the other level, it's not, but he's been a great partner in working that out as he's in a unique position with the K-8 building. But again, you can see the changes for Sawyer presented here.
I have a quick question for you guys on that last slide, Ross. I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it. I can see professional development as a line item in all the school budgets, but hasn't that been pulled up to teaching and learning, or is this just school specific stuff?
So what we did, and I think we called it out last year during the budgeting season, is we've given each building essentially, with the exception of the high school because they're unique, $2,500 to use for professional development. That's if they have something that they want to make sure they do with their staff, and that could be a lot of different things. It's much less than it used to be. And the majority of the professional development, if you go back into the teaching and learning budget, is all run through the teaching and learning department as it's aligned strictly to our strategic plan, which includes our curriculum review cycles and all the other work that we're doing. So this still allows our principals some latitude to do an offer PD if staff want to take advantage of something. But again, the bulk of our professional development is all aligned right towards our strategic plan.
All right. And then if you could go back one more slide very quickly, this is kind of a general question. I'm noticing that as you add the 5th section into 8th grade, the class sizes are getting really small.
Yeah.
And how would you manage that? I mean, if they get too small, like pedagogically, it's not great, but also fiscally, it doesn't make a lot of sense. How do you manage that?
Yeah, Ms. Viverito, thank you for asking that question tonight. Currently, well, I shouldn't say currently, we've been working all year as a K-8 team of reimagining our schedules for the future. And that is one of the areas that we're looking at because we do see that as an inequity. That work is ongoing right now. We will be coming forward to the committee in the future about that. But for budgetary purposes, we need to maintain that in the budget for right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, not seeing any other hands. Amy, you got that look on your face. Do you have a question? No, not yet. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, you're muted, Kirk. You're muted. You're almost there, though.
And that's exactly what I said. I think I'm going to make it.
I spoke too soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. So in summary, when we look at the core program changes based upon going through the schools, the total is a 2.4 FTE increase. But I will remind the committee that, as I pointed out, there are 3 sections that could be plausible reductions to that FTE as we go throughout the spring and understand what our class sizes look like towards the end of the year. We just simply need to budget for them today to ensure that we maintain our class size values that we have determined as a committee. And then our increase in special education costs, a result of the needs of our students as determined through the team meeting setting and the IEP processes. So the cost of 1 point FTE really is no choice. We need to do these things. We have to do these things because we have to meet student needs as they're written on their IEPs. And so I will take any questions in general about staffing because next Mr. Mulcairn will be talking about the proposed budget, overall proposed budget, and some revenue.
All right, everybody, any questions? It's a lot of information. Next part's probably what you're looking for. So let's just keep going.
All right, Mr. Mulcairn.
Okay.
Russ, I'm also just keeping my eye on the clock. We are edging toward 9 o'clock. So
Yep, I'll make sure we get there.
Okay, and we have some votes to take too. So just wanted to make sure we keep our eye on that.
Yep. Okay. So to bring us full circle on our proposed budget for FY25 for operating, I also want to just do a quick review of some historicals here as we sort of think about how this is split out. So here's our historical total budgets dating back to FY21 to give you a context of how things have changed. Again, this FY25 proposed includes that increase in the debt service that, you know, if you look at what's been happening over the last several years, bringing on the first stage of the high school project borrowing increases. To Ms. Cohen's question earlier about how we presented estimates and impact on taxpayers during the building process as we approach the vote, the votes in September. I think a good thing to do through the budget process this year, we publish our materials, is to make sure that we're clear about how much there is left to borrow as an estimate. I'm just thinking about making sure that we're clear about this is not the entirety of the budget of the borrowing for the new high school project. It's only a portion, so that's just something that's in my head. If you look at our historical operating budgets, again, the operating budget proposed today kind of follows the trend that we've seen over the last several years as far as the increases in the voted budgets as compared to the proposed budget this evening. So, you know, obviously, if we're talking about what the expenses are going to be, we have to start thinking about the revenue side. So within the assessments from our member towns, the minimum local contributions is only expressed as an FY24 figure. We're going to see those change as the state releases its first iteration of the budget at the end of this month. We have built in some increases in revenue for both Medicaid revenue and our investment income, where we hold our money, as I explained during the treasurer's report back in October. We have certain accounts that we hold our money in as we use it, and those are earning interest earnings right now, and we predict that will continue and we can utilize those. For the purposes of just looking at revenue for this evening, we've increased our Chapter 70 estimate by $600,000 from last year. In previous years, it's gone up 700, it's gone up around $1 million, but for right now, we're holding it as an increase estimated at $600,000 from last year. We've kept the E&D appropriation at that $1.2 million. Any updates on revenue will be provided as state aid is released again at the end of this month. That will also support and finalize our foundation enrollment too for the towns. So here's what you see in the budget materials. Again, this is really preliminary because the Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe assessments are also built off of the minimum local contribution. And again, we can't put a full picture to this, but if you look at the other revenue areas, you can get an idea of what we're thinking right now as we also consider the cost of our estimated operating budget. So here's the assessment calculation that you always see within the budget that's broken down. Again, we're looking at our minimum local contributions right now, the same as last year. Those will obviously change. The foundation enrollment will impact things a little bit on the 5-year rolling, which is all included in the regional agreement. So as we move into future meetings, we'll have a more clear picture of this, and we'll continue to update it. If you look at that last column on the bottom, that FY25 percentage increase, I do want to go and break that out a little bit, because if you look at the actual operating budget assessment versus the capital debt assessment as it stands right now, certainly the change that you see reflected on that previous slide doesn't really tell the story of the increase of the assessment for the operating budget, which is what we're talking about. It also includes the debt for the new high school that's beginning to come on board. So in the next several years, we need to make sure that we're really breaking this out clearly, not only for you as a school committee, but also for the public, for our town officials, and anybody who's looking at our budget, because we don't want to confuse the debt assessment for the new high school with our operating budget. So I've broken it out this way as an exercise this evening, and I'll continue to do so during the budget season. So some unresolved budget factors that we're facing. As I said, insurance and benefits, we're working with our insurance advisory group, but our range for the trust will come out late this month, but our actual increase will not come to us until mid-February. The special education transportation, it's out to bid through the Aspet Valley Collaborative, which we're a part of. The bid closes next week, and we'll know more by the end of January about how those bid results came in and what contracts may be developed. The state budget updates, we're expecting those late January. Last year, those were much later, as it was a new governor, a new administration. They have a much larger window in order to provide those to the Commonwealth. So when that comes in, we'll update our revenue with the Chapter 70 figure. We'll update the minimum local contributions, which will impact our assessment figures. And then we'll also update our foundation enrollment, which will impact the 5-year rolling average for the assessment calculation. So please expect updates on all of that and any other budget items that we address. Last year, we started to build a sort of an updated table for each meeting. We'll continue to do so as we re-meet in February. So I'll turn it back over to Superintendent Downing to sort of bring full circle back to some of the work that we did earlier this year.
Yes, not included in this budget that came forward to our attention from our building principals during the budgetary process are requests that we did not include in this budget, because when we looked at the totality of what the cost of this budget would be, we felt like we couldn't move forward with these efforts at this time. But I want to mention to you here, because this is what our principals are telling us they need in their schools. And that is, we really learned using the ESSER funds for building-based subs that was highly effective in addressing some of the needs across the schools. So that is something we're looking at for the future. In teaching and learning, supporting students through bringing in math specialists and reading tutors in the primary grades, in math tutors in the primary grades, and then also looking at some additional main office staffing, particularly in the towns of Lancaster and Bolton, as we have some support staff in Stowe. We need that in Lancaster and Bolton as well to support the office staffing. So we didn't include these today because we wanted to bring a budget number to you that we believe can deliver the educational program that we have to deliver today. And so with that, we'll take any questions that you may come from the committee.
Great, thanks, Kirk. I'm going to give it to Amy first.
Thank you. I guess before I ask my question, I just want to say I appreciate that Superintendent Downing included those unfunded requests, just kind of to put us on notice that, we could always be doing more, and there's always more out there that we could be funding, and to keep it kind of in the back of our minds as we make some of these decisions. But my question really goes to, I think, Mr. Mulcairn, if you could back up to where you were breaking out this slide. I want to thank you for putting this slide together, because one of my questions was why the building projects debt assessment was being rolled up into the operating budget, because it did make it hard to kind of understand the increases without that number in there. So I found this slide very, very helpful. I wanted to just clarify for the community that that the building project increase is really not going to hit residents' tax bills until fiscal year 25. These are all just proposed numbers. So any kind of increases that people are any tax bills being received in the last month or so are totally separate from the numbers that we're looking at right now. And the building project, that was a question that came up, and I think I sent this to Leah, and I'm not saying it very well, but could you just confirm that the bond that we took out is not going to hit the budget for residents until next year?
Oh, I can confirm that the bond that we sold back in November, the $30 million bond that you see the capital debt assessment includes here, that would not be assessed to the towns until FY25.
Okay. And then the number that we're seeing in fiscal year 25's budget, is that going to be changing each year going forward, or is that kind of a good estimate of what it should be?
So the first payment on this bond that was sold in November will be a little bit higher. It's just how the breakdown and the schedule works for repayment. It'll come down slightly, but you also have to remember that we'll be bringing on new financing to pay for the entirety of the project moving forward. So in all likelihood, we'll put our bond advisory group back together at the end of this school year as we start to think about going out to bond sale again within a calendar year.
Okay. Thank you.
Over to Mike.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make this quick. I'm looking at the Chapter 70 numbers from FY22 all the way to the projected value for FY25. We had a good jump up in FY22 from the previous year, and then a really big jump, and then it's been slowly tapering since. And at first I thought, well, maybe this was sort of like the impact of the Student Opportunity Act that's been tapering, but every district is different. And that kind of makes sense to me because, you know, it's based on the foundation budget, which is based on the wealth factor and all this. But anyways, I guess my question is, how are we making the estimate for the Chapter 70 funding this year? And to what extent is the SOA still impacting our numbers?
So I can say from an estimate standpoint, again, at this point in the budget building process, we want to be conservative. We don't want to put a number out for our Chapter 70 increase that's not going to come through. So that 21 to 22 was about 600,000. And then we saw a much more significant jump of over $1 million from 22 to 23. And then from 23 to this year, it was closer to 700,000. So using the 600 puts it in there with where we've been before, but not to the extent that it was on the highest end. Again, it's an exercise in making sure that we're conservative right now until we know what our actual figure is.
And I'll remind Mr. Haresh, the community, Student Opportunity Act dollars don't come to us separately. They're folded and intertwined into the Chapter 70. And so it's through the complex formula of tiered levels. And we are in the middle of our tier, which is why we feel secure that we could be funding at that rate. You noted the jump in one of those years. That was an effect because of COVID. They held on to Student Opportunity Act funds for a little bit as government funding was coming in, and then distributed it out again. So this is a conservative number for this year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Let's go over to Dana.
So for that last slide, you know, my two favorite things, specialists and substitutes. So I'm really disappointed to see these not being incorporated anywhere in the budget. So I was wondering if there is any potential of any of these asks being added as we continue down this budgeting process, getting more of the revenue information in, and if so, how are they prioritized? I guess, well, we can start with that, and then I have a follow-up question after that.
Ms. Alice, you've just defined why we put this slide in here. So it's signaling to you as the committee, these are priorities and asks. And as we get our revenue in, as we look at our enrollment numbers, as they come in and we see opportunity, we're going to say, we've told you what our priorities are. Let's go with the priorities.
Okay. My other question is, I know we've talked before about this new coaching model that we're trying and not having enough data to know if it was working yet. Are we at the point where we have any data either way? Just because if we are unsure or the results are not as promising as we had hoped they would be, is there an area where you can build in these specialists to bring back for reading and math?
You know, the data
So we're
on
not
our
having to wait
instructional
another
model,
budget cycle to have these conversations.
yeah, we're going to look at change over time in terms of the data of how our students are doing. So to analyze the effectiveness of our instructional coaches when we're 6 months into implementation wouldn't be a good assessment at all. It would be, you know, what we're talking about is culturally shifting educational practice, which is a dynamic practice that has to happen that takes over the course of multiple years. So I don't want to get us into a tyranny of debate of is it coach or specialist? It's both. The prioritizing around coaching is looking at what the research tells us is the most effective way of serving your students and interventions, and that is by lifting the tier 1 core instruction for all students first. That's the number one priority, and investing in that area is the most important area to invest in order to address any intervention needs that may be needed.
So when you're saying that the educators or your community is specifically asking for literacy specialists and reading tutors, I shouldn't read into that they're not specifically asking for coaches. They're asking for specialists. They're asking for tutors. Like, you're kind of lumping that as all the same thing. Like, it's not necessarily coach versus specialist based.
Yeah, the coaches are in place, so they're not going to ask for the coaches. So what they're saying is, as we look at this, we want to be prepped and ready. And so the asks that are coming out of there are coming from not just the principals, but in terms of our teaching and learning department, as we're looking at these things and looking at our strategies across buildings. We're also looking at alignment of our elementary schedules and our special education schedules in ways that are going to optimize how people are being utilized, because we often get locked into a schedule that prevents us from delivering services. So there's multiple angles system-wide that we're looking at to address those things.
Okay.
All right, everybody. So I think that this brings us to the conclusion of our 2024 budget workshop. Thank you so much to Kirk and his entire team for such a comprehensive presentation. A lot to consider there, and certainly a lot of moving parts that are going to continue to change over time. And I'm sure you'll be bringing us back updates at each subsequent meeting here throughout January and, well, I guess through February.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say good night to our team. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for all the hard work you put into this evening.
Thanks, everyone. All right, everybody. So I'm just going to do a quick poll of my committee. We are at 9:01, and it seems to me that we have 5 what should be relatively quick votes that we need to take, I think. Can I get a thumbs up on everybody if you're okay just going for another 10 minutes or so? I'm seeing a majority of people. Sorry, Alita, you don't get to vote. I'm sure you would be like this, though. All right, guys, we're going to keep going, and we're going to move over to the first item of unfinished business, and that's the extended day fee review. And I'm going to lean on Amy Cohen to start us off with a motion each time.
Sorry about that. Okay. I move to approve the fiscal year 25 extended day rates as presented.
And I will second that. I wonder if there are any matters for discussion.
I just want to clarify, since we didn't present anything, that all of my motions are going to refer to things that were presented at the last meeting. Is that?
That's fair.
Fair? Okay.
All right, seeing no questions, let's take the vote. Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yeah, sorry.
Great. Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shandor?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
All right, thank you for that, everyone. Let's move on to our next item of unfinished business, and that is the building rental rates. Amy Cohen for a motion.
I move to approve the fiscal year 25 building rental rates as presented in the previous school committee meeting.
I'll second that. I have actually a quick question for you, Ross. Sorry. At the bottom of your spreadsheet for the building rental, it says that there's a 4-hour minimum, I think. Can that doesn't go for the fields, does it?
No, I don't believe so, because that's not a change. I guess I would say that's not a change. So any hourly rates that are being charged right now for those fields, correct. We wouldn't want to charge a team 4 hours if they only needed an hour and a half of practice time or an hour of practice time. I can confirm with Mr. It's not a change in any practice, so I would say that. So local teams cannot expect a change to all of a sudden be needing to do 4 hours. Those are in building.
Right, because it's the custodian that you're trying to
Part of it,
compensate.
yeah. Yep.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, let's vote. Scott?
No.
Myself, yes. Jackie? Jackie, was that a yes? I'm sorry. Okay, Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shandor?
Yes.
Joe?
Madam Chairman, just a point of clarification. This is we're voting on the rental rates for the school facilities,
Yes.
and that motion was made and seconded.
Yes.
Who seconded the motion?
I did.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay. You didn't call for discussion, so I'll just make a comment that I'd like.
I did, Joe.
Oh, then may I make a comment with regards to my vote to be included in the minutes? It's not
You
a
may,
question,
sir.
it's a comment. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Thank
Yes.
you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you call for discussion. I was
That's okay.
jerking around with my hand to raise it. I'm going to vote no, and I'm going to vote no for the same reasons that I stated last year. I believe that the district should have a harmonized fee schedule for all users, and that that nonprofits should not be given enhanced status with regards to the use of our facilities. So if Ms. Masterson could include that in the minutes, I would be greatly appreciative. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Over to Karen.
Yes.
Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
All right, great. Did I miss you, Shandor? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Shandor.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the preschool update and fee review. Go for it,
I
Amy.
move to approve the fiscal year 25 preschool rates as presented during the last school committee meeting.
All right, I'll second that. And any other discussion? Not seeing any, so let's take the vote. Go ahead, Scott.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shandor?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
All right. To our next item here of unfinished business, daily sub rate review. Amy.
I move to approve the fiscal year 25 daily sub rates as presented at the last school committee meeting.
I'll second that. Any discussion on this? All right, let's take the vote. Scott?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yeah.
Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Great. And the last piece here, and that is, I need a motion for the revisions to section D of the policy manual.
I move to adopt the revisions to policy DJ1, DJA1, and DJE1 as presented at the last school committee meeting.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll take the vote. Scott?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie? Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, guys, that is it for unfinished business. If you can check out the planning calendar. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 7th, I believe, which gives us a little bit of a hiatus here. We'll have 2 weeks without a meeting. You're welcome. So, see you in 3 weeks, Scott said. So if you guys have anything that comes to the fore and you would like to see it put on the planning calendar, please just let me know. We are a little light outside of the budget. The planning calendar is a little light, so please, again, see to that. We'll have our subcommittee share out next time, and I do believe we are going to have a subcommittee goals check-in at the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken. If that is a problem for your subcommittee, let me know. We could perhaps push that off. All right, guys. Yeah, Scott.
I just wonder if we could maybe at the next meeting dissolve the OMAC committee, since we don't seem to have much use for that anymore.
Surely. Yep. Alita, could you put that on the planning calendar? Thank you. I don't have it open. All right, everybody. So it looks like we are good to go, and I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All right, let's take the vote. Scott?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Jackie?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Amy Vessels?
Yes.
Shondor?
Yep.
Joe?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy Cohen?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.